Education is not about the thing you're learning. It's about being able to look at the things around it and have a thought about it, have your own thought about it, not what people are telling you to think. And that was huge for me because all of a sudden I realized, oh, I can have a brain. Not that I didn't, but I was seeing so much more than I thought that was there. And so I knew I needed to make a change because I also realized the military had completely consumed my life. It was my identity, and I couldn't do that anymore. So just as I'm about to get promoted to Chief Foreign Officer, I retire. People were shocked. I was shocked, but it was the right thing to do. So I found another company. I worked for them for a couple of years. And then at the same time, I was like, well, finally talking about the podcast, what do I do with all this stuff I've been putting into my mind? I went back to the beginning of my course. I remember thinking the first time I'd heard of systems thinking, sure wish I'd heard about that when I was a brand new master corporal. Not, post-grad level knowledge, just knowing it exists. And that was the impetus, and that's what Trench Leadership became, was to help new and emerging leaders know these things are there. So if I can give them that bit of advice, or the guests could talk about it, then they can go forth and do whatever they want to do with it. If they don't, that's okay too.
Welcome to the Conscious Leadership Revolution podcast, where conscious leaders unite to unlock their highest potential so we can change the way the game is being played. Welcome to the Conscious Leadership Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Susan Hobson, and I am back with Tracey Allen, who is back from March break. How are you feeling after being on those beaches of Mexico with your tan, making me so jealous over there?
Oh, it's awesome to be back, but at least it's mild now.
Yeah.
Good, but yeah, nice to get some vitamin D. Well required to keep going through the year.
Yep, and you brought some of it back for us, so we're thankful for that. And then I wanted to see if it's okay if I congratulated you on your big announcement. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
If not, we can edit this part out.
It's supposed to happen tomorrow, so as long as it happens tomorrow, we're good.
Yeah, we'll push the delay button on the launch of this podcast tomorrow to make sure that it comes out in the afternoon. But Tracey Allen just got her dream role as the head of real estate for globally for Team Nokia. This is a massive point of celebration for us. We've all been witness to how committed Tracy has been on her mission to bring the best practices in the leadership development space to her people at Team Nokia. And this is quite the way to recognize all the value that you bring to your trenches on the daily. I just wanted to take stock of this and ask you how you're feeling about realizing this aspiration that you've been working towards on some level your whole career, right?
Yeah. No, it feels great. I mean, it's awesome to work hard and actually kind of people see your value and see how you're showing up, and and just not, you've seen me in some points of my career where it was difficult, so to keep showing up in those ways and doing the work allowed me to not give up, and then finally you get the right kind of recognition and people see how you show up and not wavering or changing, just being consistent in terms of what's important to me, what my values are, what I stand for. And yeah, so I'm really excited to get going on that. It'll be a huge transformation, and we're going through lots of transformation as a company. So it's going to be exciting, but I'm really happy about that. Yeah.
It is such a vote of confidence, I think, for all of us who look up to you and gain inspiration from you to see you getting recognized in this way. Authentic leadership is something we're going to talk to our guest about today in terms of why we believe these have become the table stakes for a leader's development here in 2026. This is why we reposition our podcast platform to really put the spotlight on these conscious leadership practices that help us show up as our whole selves, even at the highest levels of pressure and stakes. So it is so wonderful to see a company like Nokia really rewarding and recognizing that. It really kind of makes the case for everything we're on this show talking about every single week, right? This is absolutely what we believe the future of work is going to require out of its leaders, right? As they do all that work we see you doing in your own lane to actually have the capacity to show up authentically at the helm. So
Mhm.
huge congratulations. We're so proud of you. Thank you for letting me boast about you off the top of our show. And I'm going to thank our guest, Simon, for letting me take that minute to celebrate. My co-host, Simon Kardynal, is back for round two. That's right, folks. You had him here on the former version of our podcast, the Leadership Launchpad podcast. We'll definitely link that show in the show notes. And Simon is here to bring inspiration from his trenches as I first came across his path when I went on his podcast, which he has now repositioned himself. And I can't wait to talk about this new iteration of his show. Trench Leadership, a podcast from the front. And it's a podcast I want everybody to know about that's devoted to empowering leaders with practical advice, real world trench tools, and inspiration. And so he is definitely in alignment with our mission to change the way this game is being played here. He's also, as if he's got all this extra time on the sidelines, the RCAF Air Staff Headquarter Chief and Warrant Officer at our Department of National Defense. So when he says he's bringing tools and strategies from the trenches, he is absolutely in his authenticity when he says that. Simon, it is so great to have you back on the show. I can't wait to catch up with what inspired this new pivot on the podcast. But first and foremost, how are you?
I am doing fantastic. I get to talk to you again, and that's a win. And I meet Tracy, and I have all the big news. I get to be here for all the things. It's incredible. I'm very fortunate that this is one of the greatest things about podcasting is the people you get to meet, and you're meeting these incredible people with all this energy, and you all have the same drive, and it's all for the most part, not everyone, but for the most part, we're all there for the same right reasons, and it's so much fun. You can't help but feed off of it. I often find that if I'm coming into a recording session, I'm a little tired or I've had a bit of a bad day or whatever. All I got to do is click the record button, and things instantly change. My mood changes. I'm happy. I don't know what this. I don't know how to explain it. It's just that you feed off of it. It's incredible, and I'm obviously feeding off of this. So thank you so much for having me, Tracy. Congratulations, amazing, well deserved, I'm sure. Oh, it's
Thank you.
incredible.
Yeah, and I totally resonate with why I love podcasting so much. It's absolutely the same reason getting to step into the podcast studio is like getting to step on the ice for me. It's nothing but flow. So let's go. Let's start to dig into some of this backstory so we can catch our audience up to real time here in 2026. So, what inspired you to reposition and pivot your podcast?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I will give you a little bit of context. I'll try and give you the best Coles notes that I know how, which means a lot. So basically, I started the original version of Trench Leadership, a podcast from the front, and the name goes back to a bit of a nod to my time in the military. I started in the infantry way back in 1994. I'm 51, so that's what I could do that then. And so I was in the infantry, and I had some experiences there. I went to Bosnia, and I had some domestic things that happened. And so I wanted to recognize that. And then a few years later, I joined the Air Force because there is a program that allows us to do that. And then inside that, I guess that's when I actually started getting promoted and into those first formal leadership roles. And that was a challenge because in a lot of ways, I wasn't ready professionally. I was very good at doing the job I was doing. I was a technician, and I could paint and I could weld and I could do all that stuff. I was very good at that. However, the challenge we run into most often is in a lot of industries, especially in Western society, is hey, you're a good painter. You must be able to lead 3 to 5 painters. There is no guarantee of that. And I can honestly tell you, this cat was not great in the beginning, but I learned. I figured it out. I did all the things I had to do. I took the training the military gave me, and I eventually got better at it. Perfect? No. Close to being perfect? No. Getting there? Sure, we'll say that. Trying. That's all that matters. And that's a big lesson we'll talk about later on. So eventually I'm doing my thing, and I was all in military. I'd always wanted to be in the military, and I knew it's what I wanted to do. It's the only thing I knew, and everything I did revolved around that and get promoted, become a chief warrant officer. And I told myself it was because it was what I wanted to do real things. I wanted to have an impact. And I believe that. Somewhere along the way, I kind of got sucked into the whole get promoted and the prestige of
Mhm.
those things. I don't know when, doesn't really matter, but I still had that core belief of wanting to do something. So flash forward, it's 2019, and I start a master's degree. And in this master's degree, I am the only military member in the cohort of about 50 or so people. And both comes time to go to the residency portion, and I realize I don't deserve to be there. Well, that's the story I was telling myself. I had no right to be there. Everyone in my cohort, their professional title started with see something, this something, executive
Yes.
director. And I had teeny tiny little Simon Kardynal, who was just a lowly warrant officer at the time in my mind. And I had nothing to bring to that table. I had no right to be there. I had never heard the term imposter syndrome, but I was super duper living it. So I show up, I'm sick because I'm so freaked out. A couple days into it, I gave a chance, gave myself a chance. I put my hand up and I said, I gave some type of opinion, fully expecting them to kick me out of the course. Totally believe that. And actually what happened was like, oh, hey, that's a great idea, Simon. Thank you for that. Your perspective is something I had never dealt with before or considered because I don't know anyone in the military. Oh, maybe I have something to bring to the table. So then I slowly gave it a couple more chances. And next thing you know, I am super duper into this. And I realized two things. The first was that the military training program for its leadership, for the non-commissioned members, is fantastic. It is very, very good at training members to do the job at the next level. But that's it. There's a little tiny bit of a window either way, but it's training. Do this for this purpose. That's not education. In my mind, that was education because I was learning. But when I went to the degree program, I realized what education really was about. Education is not about the thing you're learning. It's about being able to look at the things around it and have a thought about it, have your own thought about it, not what people are telling you to think. And that was huge for me because all of a sudden I realized, oh, I can have a brain. Not that I didn't, but I was seeing so much more than I thought that was there. And so I knew I needed to make a change because I also realized the military had completely consumed my life. It was my identity, and I couldn't do that anymore. So just as I'm about to get promoted to chief warrant officer, I retire. People were shocked. I was shocked, but it was the right thing to do. So I found another company. I worked for them for a couple of years. And then at the same time, I was like, well, finally talking about the podcast, what do I do with all this stuff I've been putting into my mind? I went back to the beginning of my course. I remember thinking the first time I'd heard of systems thinking, sure wish I'd heard about that when I was a brand new master corporal. Not, post-grad level knowledge, just knowing it exists. And that was the impetus. And that's what church leadership became, was to help new and emerging leaders know these things are there. So if they, at least I can give them that bit of advice, or the guests could talk about it, then they can go forth and do whatever they want to do with it. If they don't, that's okay too. So we did that. And the show was great. It went for a couple of years. It picked up a lot of steam. Susan, we had you on there. It was great. We had a lot of fun. And like, it turns out, who knew this? When you repress hard feelings, when you try and bury them down, ignore that stuff happened, eventually that's going to rear its ugly head. And that is exactly what happened. A couple of years ago, I was just kind of doing my thing. Nothing was going on. Everything seemed fine to me. And then just realized things weren't fine. I was not acting like myself. I'll word that better. I didn't see that I wasn't acting like myself. Everyone around me saw that was the problem. They saw that I wasn't the usual jovial type that I was. I always looked like I had a cloud going around me, a cloud of just anger. And I didn't know. I just knew I didn't like what I was seeing. So I stepped back from the show. I stepped back from pretty much everything, and I reset. And that was good. It was very, very good. I'm continuing to get help. And then along the way, I was like, okay, well, maybe I can start thinking about the show again. As I started getting healthier and understanding what was going on and why, that was helpful. But I also knew then that, okay, this is not the way I wanted to be. This is not how I wanted to do. It's not how I wanted to lead myself or others. But the problem then became, okay, if that's not what I want to do, what do I want to do? And I had no idea. I had a bit of an idea, but not a firm idea. So I sat back and I thought about it, and I reflected and went back and forth. And I realized the thing was that I was doing was I was asking myself questions. And I also recognized along the way that if I'm asking questions inwardly and outwardly, then I'm going to get the information I need to do whatever. I just need to stay open to those ideas. And the reason I was having a hard time with that in the beginning was I just was putting my biases and my assumptions and my perceptions into things. And I just took that as the answer. And that's not always a win. So phase one, stay curious. Great. Now what? I know that I need to be kind. That's just who I want to be. I joined the military because I want to help people. I want to make an impact. But I also realized something, that if I'm not kind to myself, I'm not going to be able to be kind to others. So step two, be kind. The last thing was I realized that the last few years of my time in the military, I wasn't, and probably for the majority of my time in the military, I wasn't being authentic to myself. There were most definitely times when I was put in situations where I wish I had spoken up, but I didn't because I got caught up in the crowd. I got this or that, and I just wasn't brave enough to be my authentic self. So last part, lead authentically. And that's lead myself authentically and lead others authentically. Even if it's not popular, it doesn't matter. Do what you feel is right. If it turns out it wasn't the right reason for whatever reason, ask more questions and then be kind to yourself that you made a mistake. It happens. So that became my leadership mission statement to stay curious, be kind, and lead authentically. And armed with this, I now knew the direction Trench leadership had to go. It had to go that way. And I just knew it. I still feel it now. Just saying it, I'm getting tingles because I'm just so sure of it. So some shifts. And I thought, thinking, well, okay, great. Now what? How do I know what direction to go? I suppose I could listen to the listener feedback, I guess. So I did.
There
Boring, right? No, but it
you
was
go.
amazing because I finally got this. And I heard some really cool things. I got a lot of fantastic feedback, but I did get, Simon, your titles are terrible. We have no idea what they mean. They're way too long. It's ridiculous. Okay, well, that stings. So I came up with a new way to do the titles, and every title has the same heading. What Simon Kardynal knows about this. And it's the same thing every time. Fantastic. And then the other thing I got was that, Simon, your discussion points are great, except we never know when you're shifting gears because it's a conversation. And we really, really like the actionable points that you're trying to bring out of the guests. But again, we don't know when it starts. And often it's when the end music comes on and we're not going back. Okay, well, that's a problem. So I did two things. First thing was I cut down the discussion points so we could have more time talking about the things people want to hear about, the tools. And then I went in and I guess I did three things. And I made it very, very clear in the outline I sent to the guests, the format that we're going to follow. And I let them fill the information in so they know what they're already invested. And then the third one, the thing that I just think is so, so cool, is I created a segment inside there called Trench Tools. The tagline is Trench Tools that enrich every leadership toolkit. And with that, now you have something. And I actually have it piped in. The music plays. All right, we're going to shift. It is very, very clear. We get 15 minutes to talk about that. So more time. And usually that means the guest can offer two tools. That's super cool. It works very, very well. Then the last thing I had to do was there was no choice was the leadership lightning round where I give the guests 5 leadership related questions, but I don't give them the questions. The biggest thing I got back was everyone loves it, except the name is stupid because the questions are not fast and now they're the responses. So I changed it. And now it's the leadership power round. And then the other thing I did for a little tiny of a quirk to the guests is I used to use the same 5 questions every time, but they'd go and listen to a couple episodes. You now are ready for the questions. So I created a bank of 25 questions and I just randomly picked them about 10 minutes before the show starts. So they have no idea. It's awesome. I love watching this twitching. And I've been recording a bunch of these episodes right now. I'm building up a bank. I have not released any yet, but I have got to tell you, every time I do this, I'm making little tiny refinements. It is exactly what I want the show to be, what I envision it to be. But most importantly, it's not what I want it to be. It's what I'm told they want it to be, what the listeners need me to give them. And that the feeling of actually doing the thing that I say I want to do, I can't express that. It feels so good. And I'm blessed to be able to do it.
Sounds like
That's it.
you went through your own conscious leadership revolution over there, right?
Oh, yeah. I love it.
Like we talk about how conscious leadership really is all about leading from our values, right? And I think that's what you listed out with the be curious, be kind, and be authentic. And that's the piece I want to talk about the most. You heard me remarking on this one's level of authenticity and how empowering it is for all of us to see, right? Like what is possible when we show up in our authenticity as leaders. But the reality we also talk about on this show, Tracy and I, is all the consciousness training that we have to do in order to have the capacity to show up as our whole selves, right? And it sounds like some of what inspired all of this in your consciousness is some healing work that you engaged in terms of some of what was coming up, you said, to the surface.
Yeah,
And with your permission,
correct.
I'd love to dig there a little bit because I think one of the things we're on a mission to do and in the way that we want to change the way this game is being played is we want leaders to understand that healing is an aspect of their development that they have to honor at some point along the way in their ascension journey, right? The more we ascend, the higher we climb, the more the pressure builds. It's inevitable that that stuff is going to come up to the surface at some point along the way. So would you mind telling us a little bit about that in terms of how you finally were able to answer that call, because when we hear you talking about being in Bosnia, and I know I've heard some of your other stories in terms of places that you've been that have been super intense, You know, you would think, or maybe we would make the assumption that that is work that you had been doing along the way, but that's not necessarily a fair assumption, is it?
Yeah, it's I appreciate the opportunity for that. Yeah, I often get told that when I'm talking to my friends that are not in the military, I don't go into a lot of details, but some of it, to be quite honest, is pretty gruesome. But there is often an assumption that the system is going to do everything it can to take care of us. Uh, it kind of depends. I'm always on the fence about whether that's been the case or not. To be completely honest, right now, I can say our military medical system is doing the very best that it can do with whatever they've got. It has really it works very, very hard to take the stigma of saying that we have these types of things going on. And because for a long time, when I joined the military, like I said, back in 1994, it just, it was just, you just wouldn't talk about it. Not in my world, anyways. Not in the infantry. We were too machismo. We were too tough. We were too cool to admit that. And if you did, you were weak and you were ridiculed, terribly, terribly, terribly ridiculed, and because you were weak and you're therefore not worthy. And so that was a challenge. If I could give a super quick example, if that's okay, I promise no craziness. But would that be okay or? Okay, so the thing was, so in 1998,
Please,
okay,
please.
excellent,
Yes,
excellent.
please, please.
So back in 1998, there was a plane crash, the Swiss Air Flight 111. It crashed off the coast of Peggy's Cove in Nova Scotia. And my unit, I was in Gagetown, New Brunswick. My unit was the QRF, so the Quick Reaction Force. Every region has a group of people that is set together to go and react quickly to any type of disaster that might happen. They still have it today. And so my company my company being the infantry unit I was with, we were the QRF. So we got sent, away we went. And for the next few days, we were doing stuff related to that. We were predominantly walking along the beach, picking up things and doing different things. And we did that for a week or so. At the end of it, they put us, there was my platoon, they put us in this room, 30 of us in a circle, plunked the social worker in the middle of us and said, okay, who's suffering from this? Not as we stared at each other for a while. And I think some of us wanted to say something, but no one put their hand up. No one was going to put their hand up because if you did, that's like saying, hey, look at me, I'm weak. And you're not going to do that when you're in front of all your peers.
Mhm.
But I would like to offer this. I'm still impressed when they did that because this is 1994. So the fact that they were even recognizing that there might be a challenge, there might be something that coming up from this, the fact that they did that for me is still pretty impressive. Should I have said something? I don't know. I was 23 years old. Honestly, it was an adventure for me. Not in a, yay, this is a great thing I'm doing, but I'm 23 years old. What do I know when I was 23? Nothing. So, I just, the way I went, years go by and I'm fine. Like I'm doing my thing. I have macabre jokes about it. But eventually, like I said in the beginning, these things burble their way up to the top. Now, here's the thing. So I do Bosnia, I go do some other things, and then I go to, I do Swiss Air, do some other things. Then I go to Bosnia in the mid 90s. There's some stuff happening there. And that's another one. But again, now I'm 24. I'm not any older. I'm just going to bury that stuff down and I'm not going to talk about it. I'll probably have a whole bunch of alcohol and then I'm still not going to talk about it. And then flash forward a number of years, you just forget about it. You get moving on, you do your thing. But like I said earlier, eventually these things, the cup gets full and it fills over. I don't know exactly what it was that kind of made the switch for me, but I knew it happened. Oh, it did. I very, very much knew it happened. I've spoken to different people and they said for them it was a slow transition. For me, it was like just pouring the water out all over me. And I just had to deal with it.
Mhm.
And I suffered. It was very difficult because all of a sudden things I had repressed for so long are sitting there. What do I do with these things? So I had a choice to make. I can keep trying to bury it down, but I knew something was off. I had to figure this out. So I started dealing with it. And dealing with it meant that doing things that I had never imagined in my life I would do, talking to a therapist, talking to anyone about these things. And I will admit, I went one way really hard too fast. I was telling everyone about everything, and that was a problem.
Mhm.
So if I could offer some advice, when you're in the middle of anything that's challenging, take a breath, stop and breathe. I promise you, it will help. It will make a difference. And then when you're ready, push forward again because it's not going away. That's the kick. That's what I learned. It's not going away. I'm a couple years after this, and then I'm a lot better. I'm able to understand what's going on, why I'm feeling so dark, or these different things. I'm able to see the connections, but that doesn't mean I don't feel it. And it's what I choose to do with it. And that's the kick. That's all about how we were able to do things. And I will be completely honest. And now that I'm on the other side of this, and I'm seeing some of the light. I am a much better leader for this. I am not quick to reaction. I will take the time to think about things before I drive it. I understand now. Okay, there might be something else going on. And the other thing is, I've learned that I don't know what's going on with that person over there. I don't know what's happening in their life. The example I love to use when I'm talking about this is one day I learned to drive in Winnipeg. So I'm an aggressive driver. That's just the way it is. And I'm cruising along doing my thing. And then so I was here a number of years ago. And well, actually, that's not true. It was a couple years ago. All of this was burbling up. I'm driving down the road and I'm on one of the main arteries. It's on the 417, coincidentally. And I'm cruising along, minding my own business. I got the speed limit's 100. I'm doing like 118, doing my thing. And some guy whips in front of me and cuts me off. There was no requirement for it. I'm by myself. And then I see him whip off and he burned off to the highway, off the highway, took the ramp and went right to the hospital. And I was saying, of course, when the guy cut me off, I'm like, and I was already getting ready to turn my cruise control off and chase this person down and cut them off because you know what's going to happen. That guy's going to be like, you know what, Simon? Thanks, buddy. Now I learned my lesson. I got it. I appreciate that. That was the first thing. Like, there's no way they're going to learn their lesson.
No.
But the thing that I realized was when I saw this car pull into the hospital parking lot, I don't know why they're going there. I don't know. My assumption is that they're a jerk and that they're cutting everyone off. But maybe they're going there because they need to get there because someone's dying. Maybe they're going there because they're having the birth of a child or something is there, but there's a reason they're going to that hospital. And most people don't just go to the hospital for fun. So that made me realize I don't know what's going on in that car. I don't know what's going on in their mind. I don't know. So who am I to put my assumptions and my perceptions and my biases on these things when it could just be an honest mistake? Maybe they're jerks. That's quite possible, but I still don't know. So I asked myself the question, without knowing that, do I want to assume they're jerks or do I want to assume that they're just a person who might just be being a person? I chose option two. Now, let's be clear. That doesn't make it easy. And I don't automatically think that when someone cuts me off every time. I still have to remind myself, you don't know what's going on. And coincidentally, after we talked, I was out driving around very shortly after, a couple days later, and I was making my turn, and I always use my turn signals, except this time. I just forgot. I was thinking about something else, and I just missed it. And everyone was freaking out because it made a big deal that I didn't have my turn signal on. Again, I just forgot. I'm not a jerk. Well, depends who you ask. But in this instant, it was just an honest mistake. Not something I do regularly, but without asking the question, hey, what's going on? How could anyone know? So be honest about it. Just ask the questions. And with that conscious level of understanding of myself, intrinsically and extrinsically, I can be a much better leader. I can be the leader I want to be. Am I perfect at it? No. But I ask the questions. Hope that answered your question. I invite everyone to look, be conscious about what your tics are, be conscious about what they might be and how they're affecting others in you. Because I promise, I guarantee, as the leader, it is being judged. And most often, in the vacuum of information, it's the nuclear option where it's not to your advantage.
I love it. And it definitely is why I asked the question, to highlight how, yes, even healing is consciousness training. Look at the elevation of consciousness that you have on the other side of engaging in that deeper work, right? Tracy, what about you? Do you have any questions for our friend Simon? I've been hogging the mic today.
Yeah, no. I think that's actually like the discussion and the awareness that you have around, being able to understand and have compassion for other people and trying to understand their situation. I think is something that I heavily lean in every day because helps me lead with empathy because we all run into different walls all day and not everybody has the same external or the same challenges, right? But everybody's looking to do their own thing and sometimes you just don't have that alignment. So being able to like try to understand what the other person is going through or maybe their experiences that they've had that is triggering them into certain states, even just to not have to know it, but know that there's some wounds there and that, you can be compassionate to that helps me anyway. And I see how you're the same in that sense. It really, for other leaders, it's a helpful tool to kind of like have that compassion allows you to like look at them in a different way and releases some of our kind of stress internally to say, okay, you know what, there's probably something there, and maybe I need to be a little bit more empathetic as opposed to, running against it and trying to like, more confrontational way. So I love that, and I use that tool on the daily because it helps me navigate to be a better leader too, right?
Oh yeah,
Thank you for sharing.
absolutely. Yeah, no, thank you. And you're absolutely right. Like I find myself when I'm in these leadership roles and the nature of the job that I do, um, my main job is to support the commanding officer. So her and I, we get together and I report to no one except her, and that's it. And so my job is to know. I have many jobs, but one of the main functions is to know the pulse of the team. What is the morale like? What are people feeling and thinking? And there's a couple different ways we can do that. At the school we get trained in certain ways to at the military school for these things. They talk about different avenues, and they work for most people. For me, and they just don't fit me. For me, and some of them work. I don't say they don't fit, but my preference is to just talk to people, and every chance I get, remind, hey, I am trying to be open here. So how can I do that? How can I create an environment where you feel that you can be safe with me? And understanding in the military, we have a chain of command and we have our rank structures. These things come into play. So how I'm able to kind of really remind them is every chance I get, remind them, hey, is this a safe environment? And if it's not, let me know. And if you don't feel safe talking to me about it, talk to someone you do feel, and then it'll get its way back to me, and we'll talk about it. And I promised folks that when I hear things that are maybe not flattering, I won't get upset. I won't place blame. I'll take it in, and we'll discuss it. We'll figure it out. And I know that the only way that I've been able to actually make people believe it is by being authentic, by asking the questions and doing what I say I'm going to do time and time and time again. And eventually it works. I think it's working. People come talk to me. I find out what's happening. And then I go from there from that. And to your point, Tracy, about using this within your teams, what I find myself doing is I'm asking myself the question when someone comes at me and then maybe they're really ramped up or they seem a little bit off, especially when they're angry. And I'll ask myself the question, is this the type of behavior I normally expect to see from this member? And if it's not, if it's a no, and it usually is a no when people are really upset, that's the time for me to ask the question, hey, listen, you don't really seem like yourself right now. Are you okay? Is there anything we need to talk about? Do you need to take a moment? What's going on? And I'll tell you, just the acknowledgement that maybe you're looking beyond just that surface level, that pays spades so often. And I mean it. I'm not. It works. That makes it even better. That's the other thing is you need to be authentic in everything you're doing. Our human beings BS meters are finely tuned. They'll smell it right away. So you just got to be honest. It sounds easy. A lot of times it's a little more challenging.
Yeah, let's talk about that challenge, shall we? Because I think we're talking about being authentic and how it's the new table stakes, we believe, for leadership and certainly the future of leadership, right? Because you're right. That's a felt sense in a human experience. We can feel if somebody is listening for the purposes of understanding what's really going on with us. And that's what makes us feel safe to actually be vulnerable to share that, right? But the very opposite is true when a leader doesn't care about what's really going on there, right? Is that that can actually be a break in that trust and that rapport and that psychological safety. So, what would your advice be to leaders out there who are listening to this conversation and hearing that they got to learn how to show up authentically, and then maybe having a lot of fear and reticence come up in their nervous system as a reaction to that statement? Where is it? We talk so much, and I'm sure you can resonate with this, about courage. And we think of that in this physical sense. It's like we need courage to fight and be strong and da, da. But this is an emotional strength that we're talking about, being able to govern and compel as leaders, right? To be able to show up in this authentic way. So what tools from the trenches can you share with our audience in terms of how to really start to step to that table consciously and do that type of development?
That's a big question, but I'm going to do my best to answer it. The thing is, if we want to be our authentic selves, we need to know what that means. What does that mean to me? What does that mean to you? And if you're not, and most people, my experience has been when I've talked to folks about this is they don't know. They just know they need to do it. And then the example I love to use is if I was to ask Tracy, what does Nokia do? What is Nokia's purpose? Like we just also assume we know. That was a rhetorical question, but it's hard in that moment. You get put on the hot seat. It's hard to answer that question and the reason I clued into this was someone came to me one day and said, "Hey, Simon, you're in the Air Force." Yeah, sure am. what's the purpose of the Air Force? And I kind of stared at them like, sure, why? It's not to fly planes. That's, it's not to have the pilots fly around. It's what is our purpose? Our purpose is to be part of our defense, to bolster Canada and influence Canada in ways that we need to do in whatever the government tells us to do. Okay, great. What does that mean? And I'm like, holy, I don't know. That's a great question. And then if you apply that to ourselves, we went there. And so after a conversation, we were able to get there. I just know it. I know what the Air Force needs to do. I know how the Air Force needs to do it. I just don't know how to articulate it. And that most often is what people experience when they need to know how they want to be. They just know they want to be good. Okay, well, what does that mean? Good for me is different than what it means for the two of you. So the question then becomes, what does that mean for me? So that would be the first thing I would offer, is ask that question. What do I want to be? And then ask the next question, what does that look like? I promise, most often, that you're not going to know that answer. And that's okay. But the thing is to keep asking those questions. What does it look like? And keep drilling down and down and down. And if you're not sure where to go, and this is the question I get asked a lot by leaders is, okay, great. Well, you're telling me to be good, or you're telling me to be authentic. How do I get there? I don't even know where to start. Ask your friends, hey, what do you see? What do you see in me that I might bring value? What do you think I have to bring to the table? Ask people you trust, and they will be honest. But when I'm saying ask people that you trust, don't ask people that you think are going to give you the answer you want. Ask people that you know will give you the honest answer, even if it stings, because that is where the learning comes in. If it hurts a little bit, probably good. It's supposed to hurt a little bit. It's supposed to help us grow and reflect on ourselves. And that brings me to point number 2. Learn how to self-reflect. Learn how to be aware of yourself. Be honest with yourself. The example I love to use is, I don't like tomatoes. Now, what does that mean? It means I don't like tomatoes. Often that means I don't like anything to do with tomatoes. But in fact, what it means is I don't like to eat a whole tomato. I'm not going to sit down like my daughter, which I still struggle with today. She will sit with a hothouse tomato, put a little bit of salt on it, and mow that thing down. I cannot understand it. I love my daughter. She's great, super smart. But this is where we split. But that's the thing. I don't like tomatoes, but I like tomato bacon and lettuce sandwiches. I like tomatoes on hamburgers, super thin slices of tomatoes on hamburgers. I don't like ketchup, but I like the ketchup on McDonald's cheeseburgers. So is it safe to say I don't like tomatoes, or is it safe to say I don't like tomatoes certain ways? Okay, that's great. So that's more accurate. So get more accurate. Understand, and I know that because I reflected on it. It sounds like a silly word, but once we would realize the fact that these are the things we need to do, we can't know ourselves if we don't look inwards. And if we don't know how to look inwards, ask people you'll trust. They'll get you there. It might not be fun, but they will get you there and make the trip. And then once you've got those 2 bits of information, then the work really starts. Now you have to actually do it. What does this look like? Okay, I get it. I know what I need to do. Come up with an action plan. For me, it was come up with my leadership mission statement, which, again, a lot of people, oh, that's a silly name. Oh, sure. You don't have to enjoy it, but it matters to me. Those 6 words matter to me. And when I put them together, I just knew this is what and how I want to be. This is how I want to lead. This is how I want to be as a person. And by following it, I know that I'm doing the very best that I can do for myself and my team. Am I perfect at it? Of course not. Just today, I was talking to some group members there, and I realized I wasn't asking any questions. My assumptions were getting in the way of what I was going to be doing about. And we're all sitting there talking. And it was funny because one of the members is like, hey Simon, that doesn't really make sense for you. I'm like, well, yeah, that's right. And I realized I was allowing my assumptions to get in the way. So that brings me to my next point. You come up with your plan. Ask yourself, again, it's all about asking questions. Is this plan what I really need to be? Is this plan how I want to be? And look at the different assumptions or biases you may have and see where they're embedded in there, because I guarantee they are. Ask yourself the question, does this make sense? And then when you're happy with it, give it to someone you trust. Does this make sense? And if they don't like it, then figure it out. Come up with a plan. Maybe it doesn't need to change, but the thing here, what you're doing is you're making sure it's authentic to you, to what you need and how you want it to be. And once you've got that, now you can really roll with it. And then the extra practice works. You got to practice. You got to practice, and understand that it will very likely change. When I first started with these 6 words, it was be curious, stay kind, and lead authentic. And I changed them around. I changed them all the time. Eventually, I landed on this, and it just, when it hit, I just knew it. I just knew it was there. And now that I get to be this way, it's incredible. And I got to tell you, folks, on the other end of this, I feel lighter. I feel happier, and making decisions at work easier. because I know I'm doing as best that I can do. Are they right every single time? Have I made mistakes? Sure, I make lots of mistakes. But when I'm done, after the end that mistake is over, I go back to it. I'm asked the questions. What was the problem? Okay, you made a mistake. Not the end of the world. Be kind to yourself. Move forward. Now, all of this is to say, and I'll back it a little tiny bit. With that, and I'm authentic. Did I do this the very, very best that I could do? Yes or no. And then if it wasn't, why wasn't that the case? And then we figure it out. And it's okay. It's mistakes are going to happen. Now here's the thing. And I've been asked this question many, many times. Hey, Simon, okay, great. That sounds fantastic. But, when are you going to hold people accountable? Well, that's part of the authenticity. One of my traits and one of my needs is accountability. So if you make a mistake, that's fine. We make a mistake. We figure out what the problem was, and then we go forth. If you were negligent in the job you're doing, well, I'm still the leader. I'm still in charge. So guess what? I will authentically hold you to account as hard as anyone else, because that takes me back to the point. You need to be fair. You need to be equitable, and it needs to be transparent, which is how I want to lead. Well, it's not convenient. So I go and I do that. You can still hold someone accountable and still be authentic to yourself. Accountability and reflecting and being aware of who you are does not mean giving everyone a pass. It means that you're just doing the very best that you can do, and you now know how to articulate that. Once you can articulate it, you can articulate it to others. It's important.
I think it is kind to hold people accountable, right? It is
I
an
agree.
expression of care, and it's one that always gets lost in the damn sauce and the context of high performance when we're talking about high performance through this lens of authenticity. But yeah, I think holding people accountable is how you show them that you believe in that potential, or else you wouldn't have set that bar there and you wouldn't have agreed that we'd head towards hitting that bar, right? It's like how we show that we actually believe in that potential.
Exactly. And honestly, I mean, we've all seen it. Sometimes it's most often, I would argue, the failures are the things that we need to do. We need to make those mistakes.
Hmm.
Survivorship bias talks a lot about this, where we have the Western society has this ability to go and look at the successes we've had in the past as the only way to succeed going forward. The example that they use often is Abraham Wald in World War II. He was a mathematician, and with a team of people, they went to Europe because the Allied air forces were getting decimated, just destroyed. The chances of surviving were very, very small. It was actually better to be in the infantry. You had a better chance of surviving than being in the Air Force. So then they couldn't figure this out. So what they did was they went over there and these mathematicians and these statisticians, and they said, okay, we need to figure this out. We need to survive. We need to make these planes survive better. So what they did was they looked at all the planes that came back and they battle damaged them. And they put little red dots all over the airplanes. There's a quite famous photo of it. And they said, okay, great. These are the areas where all the little red dots are. This is where we need to add extra armor. So they did, and nothing changed. Actually, the stats got worse. And so they sat back and they looked at it. And Abraham Wald was sitting there one day. He's like, I actually don't care where those red dots are. The plane made it back. It survived. We need to know how what's hitting these planes, and there's not getting back. So they had to figure that out, and that was much more difficult because the planes weren't getting back. So they sat down, they looked at a bunch of different things. So they just tried. They tested. They failed, but they asked the pilots, they asked the aircrew questions. Where do you see hits happening? Where do you see this? What's this? What's that? When and what type of things? And through those questions, they were able to refine where they needed to put the armor. And once those questions got asked, once they got through the failures and they accepted the fact that they were going to fail, all of a sudden, like almost overnight, the plane started surviving. The plane started coming back quicker, and everyone, air crew started surviving, and things went well. But it takes time, and so that's a huge lesson. You're going to make the mistakes. They needed to make those mistakes to get to the point where they got there. Now, of course, I'm talking about human lives being lost, but that's an extreme example of this. So yeah, survivorship bias is a thing, and we all do it. We don't even know we're doing it.
Hmm. Yeah, feedback, not failure, is the key there, and the growth mindset that you're referring to. And I think if I could capture the answer to that question in regards to your strategy for how leaders can learn to show up more authentically, it's that conscious curiosity,
Exactly.
right? And like first and foremost in our self leadership, so that we can actually start to deepen said self knowledge that you were referring to there a second ago. And then it's like going to our trusted advisors, our support systems, the people who know us best that we can rely on to give us the truth, in terms of that feedback, and going to them with that conscious curiosity too. I think the place we want to land this plane today with you, sir, is yeah, we've got a lot of intensity going on in the world right now. And I know Tracy and I have really been devoted on this show of asking our experts what their advice is, their conscious leadership advice in terms of, and I'm going to ask you because, yeah, some of that intensity that's in the world right now is in regards to some of the wars that we see that are all of a sudden coming about. And I think as civilians, that obviously creates a ton of uncertainty in our nervous system. So I'm wondering what your advice would be in terms of how to manage that uncertainty right now. For any leaders that are listening, obviously, this doesn't have to be that intensity in regards to the wars. It can just even be the uncertainty in terms of AI and future generations coming into the workforce. There's so much change that is all of a sudden so ripe here in 2026. So, what is your advice to those leaders listening, looking for some trench strategy on that front?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Thank you for letting me answer that. So I guess I have 2 points. The first one would be know what you know. Like, what do you really know in these situations? It's in this information-rich world, everything's hitting us, and we're not getting all the information. It's clickbait. It's 10 seconds on here, it's 16 seconds there, 140 words here. Are we really capturing the entire Mideast campaign in 140 words? Of course not. And what's happening in that 140 words? It is being skewed by the person who's writing them.
Mm.
So ask yourself, is this really what I want to know? Or is this really, does this make sense? Because if it doesn't, it probably doesn't. Or maybe you're not educated enough in that particular topic. That's okay too. There are places to go find the information. If we're concerned about things, knowledge is power. So take the time, learn about where to get that knowledge, and you'll figure it out. The internet will provide some answers, and it'll take you in the right direction. So take the time, know what you really know, and then learn what you really want to know about. Take that. That is a big deal. And also the other thing in all of that is the other thing I would say rather is that take the time to ask yourself these different questions and accept the fact that you're not going to be able to stop a war. Like, I can't stop a war. There's no way I'm going to be able to do that. But what I can do is control everything inside my sphere, that I have to be able to do. I know that I don't know what's going on with the Americans. To be completely honest, I don't know. I can't understand. I look at it and it's like I'm watching a Civil War movie about to erupt. And when I first started, I was like getting really upset about it. And one day I was just like, well, what can I do about this? There's nothing I can do about it. I know that I can make sure I'm safe, that my family is safe, that I'm doing the very best that I can for the country and all those things. And that's it. And I don't like it, and it's not easy, but I've accepted that that's what I can do. And now with that knowledge, I'm able to calm down. I watch and what can I do to lessen that? I watch the news a little bit less. I read things that are more fun. I read a lot more football news and those things. So I control the things that I can control, and I manage the things that I can. And those that I can't, I do my very best to watershed them, as sometimes it's harder than others, but I do my best and I acknowledge it when I can't. And then I guess the last thing is just understand that we are in Canada. If you're happening to be listening in Canada, that we are a safe country. Every country has its challenges. Every country has its successes. We're doing everything we can, and we are all managing things as best we can. We'll just keep on rolling. We will be okay. Gas is expensive now. And I drive a truck. That sucks. We just do the best we can.
I'll take it if it means safety in our country. It is
Exactly.
an exchange I do not mind making. I'm so glad that we had you in, Simon. Thank you so much for allowing us to go deep into your into your trenches. It's always such an enjoyable flow when we have you on. Tracy, any final thoughts or any final questions or any final remarks for our folks?
No, I think you hit it right on we're very aligned in terms of, when we talk about curiosity and authenticity and leadership and, consciousness, I think is one of the things that we're really trying to tap into, and, not just leading on autopilot, but actually being conscious and intentional about decisions we make and the impacts we'll have on others, right? So that every time we make a decision, we think about how is that going to motivate, inspire, demotivate, crush somebody. It's like those, every time you're leading, those are things that you need to be thinking about. And that's really what we're trying to help everybody get conscious about. So thank you.
Oh, thank you for having me. And if I have one little thing that I might add, would that be okay?
Final
So
thoughts.
you're talking about that as leaders, the need that we're being looked at. Something I often talk about is the fact that as the leaders, everything we're doing, everything we're saying, how we're saying, how we're standing, what we're not saying, every single aspect, we are being judged by those that we get to lead. It is a privilege to lead. But at the same token, it's tough. Every single thing we do, it is being judged. You're standing a certain way. Oh, that must mean this. You're nodding your head slightly, and when really all you're really saying is you comprehend what they're saying. Oh, he must agree with me, or this or that, and it gets turned, it gets twisted to win their battle. So the example I often use is I have this thing when I'm really concentrating. My daughter calls it the Garfield eyes. For those who don't know what Garfield is, it's the cat in the '80s, the cartoon. And Garfield would get really, really grumpy all the time if he didn't like lasagna, or if he didn't get lasagna, he loved it. So it's this look at the brow furrows. And I'm kind of looking, I cross my arms, and all I'm doing is really, I'm in it. I'm knee deep in the concentration of listening to what's being said and considering everything. Unbeknownst to me, for years and years and years and years, what that meant to everyone externally was that I was upset and I strongly disagreed with what they were saying. In fact, it's the exact opposite. Well, maybe I didn't disagree, but I was just really trying to take it in and really think about it until my daughter called me on it one day. I'm like, oh, so we had this conversation, went back. So I went back to my work and I'm talking to everyone at work, and the rank I was at, I was a sergeant. So I was the mid-tier. And like, yeah, like we just assumed that you just didn't agree with anything. So we stopped talking to you about stuff we thought you wouldn't agree about. I'm like, holy crap, that pivotal moment. So now, so how do I combat that? It's not combat, is the wrong word, but how do I acknowledge that? Is when I'm going into a potentially a tense conversation, or I'm going into something that might be affected by these things, I put it out on the table. Hey, listen, I have Garfield eyes. This is what it is. And if you're not sure, if I'm doing that and you see me doing that, I invite you to call me on it. I can't promise I'm going to stop because that's me in it, but at least it's out there and we all know about it. And it's not this thing that at the end of the conversation, the person's walking out thinking, oh, what a jerk. He didn't even want to hear a word I said. And I think everything's fine, thinking I'm a really great leader because I've been trying to help everyone out, when in fact, I just made things worse and I didn't even know it. We are being judged in everything. I invite everyone to look, be conscious about what your tics are, be conscious about what they might be and how they're affecting others in you, because I promise, I guarantee, as the leader, it is being judged. And most often in the vacuum of information, it's the nuclear option where it's not to your advantage.
Conscious leadership, mic drop. I feel like right there, in terms of people really know you care when you come into the room, priming them on your body language to not disrupt the psych safety and trust in that room. It just is such a wonderful note for us to end on. Simon Kardynal, if y'all are looking to find him, I think LinkedIn is probably a pretty great place if you want to ask him any questions or continue the conversation with him on the sidelines. I also want you to head on over to wherever you're listening to this podcast, in fact, and go on and follow along for his new iteration of his infamous leadership podcast, Trench Leadership. That's it. That's all, right, Simon? Trench Leadership is how they will find you on Spotify, iTunes, or maybe even YouTube. Are you on YouTube?
We're releasing YouTube videos. I have the whole catalog from all of the old episodes out there, and it's wild. It's crazy. 164 episodes.
Please go on over and check that out. Definitely lots of this type of really relevant, resonant advice in terms of the conscious leaders listening today. And for all of you following along with us, thank you so much for tuning in. Please leave us a little bit of feedback too, as we were talking about feedback being gold today on the show. We want to hear how this new iterated platform is resonating with you all. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Tracy. And we'll see you all next week.